As it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
This is James O'Neill. President Trump said he has given Iran a short deadline of a few days to present a peace deal or face renewed U.S. military strikes. He stated that planned attacks were paused due to ongoing negotiations, partly at the request of regional leaders, but warned U.S. forces remain ready for a large-scale assault if talks fail. Trump emphasized preventing Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons, citing threats to Israel and Gulf nations.
I was asked by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and some others if we could put it off for 2 or 3 days, a short period of time, because they think that they are getting very close to making a deal. And if we can do that where there's no nuclear weapon going into the hands of Iran, I think, and if they're satisfied, we will be probably satisfied also.
Shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz increased to at least 54 vessels in the week ending May 18th, up from 25 the previous week, as U.S.-Iran negotiations continue and global pressure mounts to keep the route open. Iran has allowed some Chinese vessels to pass and established a new authority to regulate transit, requiring coordination with its forces. The United Nations has called for freedom of navigation, warning disruptions could worsen inflation in supply chains. Despite the ceasefire, tensions remain high, with continued incidents reported and a U.S. naval blockade still in place. Negotiations between Washington and Tehran continue amid competing proposals. A NATO air policing fighter jet shot down a stray Ukrainian drone over Estonia after it entered the country's airspace, reportedly due to Russian electronic warfare interference. Ukrainian officials apologized, saying the drone had been redirected by Russia. The incident occurred amid heightened regional tensions linked to the war in Ukraine, with Baltic states increasing security measures. Estonia confirmed the drone was tracked and neutralized safely, while NATO emphasized its readiness to respond to threats. Latvia and Finland also issued alerts about potential drone risks. Russia denied involvement and accused Ukraine of planning attacks from Baltic territory, which Latvia rejected. Russia and Belarus launched large-scale joint military exercises involving tens of thousands of troops, aircraft, ships, and missile systems to practice deploying nuclear forces in response to potential threats. The drills include test launches of ballistic and cruise missiles and coordination between multiple branches of Russia's military. Belarus said the exercises are planned and not directed at any country, while Ukraine condemned them as a threat to global security and a violation of nuclear non-proliferation principles. Russia has stationed tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus since 2023, but maintains control over them amid ongoing tensions following its invasion of Ukraine. Australia is losing an estimated $104 billion annually in productivity due to challenges integrating skilled migrants into the workforce, according to analysis by Pearson, which administers English proficiency tests. While most migrants are employed and often in skilled roles, barriers such as language gaps, delayed recognition of overseas qualifications, and mismatches between skills and jobs hinder full economic contribution. Experts say improving language training and speeding up credential recognition could boost productivity and better utilize migrant talent. The findings come amid rising migration levels and political debate over immigration policy, with projections of significant population increases in coming years. Vice President J.D. Vance spoke about political violence during a press briefing at the White House.
Every politically conservative person I know would say exactly what I said about these innocent people who were killed. There were a lot of people who were celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. And I think one way that we can bridge the divide is just have a very simple principle in this country. Number one, we don't want the government throwing people in prison because they have bad politics, however you define bad politics. Number two, and way more importantly, political violence, wherever it comes from, is unacceptable in the United States of America.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today. Now the protagonists.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome to the Protagonists. I think this will be a little bit, not fiery, but will be a fair amount of passion. I have that feeling in my bones this next show. Tommy Robinson's May 16th Unite the Kingdom rally was enormously successful. 432 million people turned up. And it was successful. I can hear some chuckling in the background already. That's not the noise we need to hear. But it was one of the largest gatherings the UK has ever seen. The crowd was not far right, but ordinary British people protesting their treatment at the hands of their government. And for its part, the Starmer Government banned 8 foreign speakers, journos, from entering the country. And for the first time, police found a criminal. No, for the first time, police imposed speech conditions on speakers at the rally and at the counter-protest Palestinian March held on the same day. That's what democracy is all about. Live facial recognition, just to add, was used at the Unite the Kingdom rally, and organisers were held responsible for ensuring invited speakers did not break the law with hurty speech. Some call it hate speech. This was a shameful attempt to intimidate the populace, and I'm quite sure there's more of this to come. Of course, the government will not change its ways. In fact, it will dig in further, divide and conquer, and maybe spark dangerous violence to justify new draconian measures of control. And do the future saviours of Britain exist in the crowd? I wonder. Who is Tommy Robinson? Eloquent, passionate, who supports him, and who finances him? Is he a catalyst for change, or some say a masterful agent of chaos? As for others waiting on the wings to take government, like Nigel Farage, is he a mere defender of the present realm, or is he a game show host in waiting? Are these people merely puppets of the establishment who will not restore decent, accountable governance that works for rather than against ordinary British citizens? I just wonder. Our panel today is Basil Valentine, journalist and broadcaster, the best looking man on UK column apparently, according to Basil. There he is, he's laughing away. Rana Sterling, human rights lawyer and visitor to our studio, and David Atherton, a journo and a very good scribbler. So there you are. We're very, very privileged to have the good-looking and the intelligent ones here. Basil, first of all, as you come down from your raucous laughter, thank God, but you turned the microphone off. Tell me, what was your thoughts on this 432 billion rally?
Well, first of all, it wasn't as numerous as the previous so-called Unite the Kingdom rally in September last year. It was generally estimated there were about 60 or 70,000 people supporting Robinson one way or another, although very mixed messages coming out of it. I've even seen people saying that they didn't realise that Tommy Robinson was the organiser, and a very diffuse crowd, actually. No single coherent message amongst the people on the Unite the Kingdom March, apart from the quite understandable frustration of largely working class people in Britain who feel politics has abandoned them over the last 30 or 40 years. The Labour Party, the traditional home of the working class, has become a metropolitan, neoliberal, and anything but representative of their interests. In fact, disdainful is putting it mildly. A lot of people say that the Labour Party in Parliament and HQ Labour Party, as opposed to the constituencies, really despise the working class, which are their base. And this has been an increasing trend since the late 1990s. So there's a tremendous amount of frustration out there in the country. There's no doubt about it, because all sorts of things have happened over the last 30 or 40 years for which nobody voted. I mean, the key, the unavoidable nugget, if you like, at the centre of this, certainly the one that Robinson seeks to exploit is the profound demographic changes in Britain. Of course, not by illegal, but by legal migration, particularly from used to be called the new Commonwealth countries of South Asia and the West Indies. Although remarkably, I saw one marcher being interviewed defying the fact that back in the 1990s we had cohesion amongst both the indigenous population of Britain and more recent immigrants from Commonwealth countries, black or white. And there were a few black people on the march. What there weren't were any Muslims, because Robinson has one central message, really, which is quite unabashed hatred, not just for the religion of Islam, but seemingly for large numbers of its adherents here in Britain.
Rada, you're a human rights lawyer. I just want to read this to you and tell me how far we've gone down the big black hole. Ahead of the United Kingdom rally in central London, the UK Home Office revoked the ETAs, blocked entry for at least 7 to 11 foreign, they call them far-right agitators, journos and people with an opinion. They said that they justified their bans because their presence was not conducive to the public good, as they were coming to stir up violence and promote hate speech. What would you say to that? Do you think that they've gone down this big black hole and it's looking very, very dangerous? Because what happens next?
I think it's quite the beginning of the future, essentially, of travel and freedom of movement. We've always relied upon the United Nations principles for freedom of movement, and we've always complained upon if our restrictions on us to travel have been imposed. And of course, countries are able to approve and deny visas, but I think we're seeing a sort of globalist China where a lot of different countries who share the same political views, whether it's the Western nations with the European, the English-speaking countries, the Five Eyes, along with the EU, can just make a joint policy together not to allow certain people to travel. Now, we saw it in Australia with Candace Owens being denied a visa. We've seen it throughout COVID as well. And now I think we're just seeing in its infancy the future of being utterly controlled by our governments based on our political viewpoints and what we say in public. Now, these days, everything that we say is public by the way that we're on social media, that we communicate our views publicly, that we engage in public debate, discussion, and we're in the square, essentially. But if we say something that a government doesn't like, we could essentially be banned from not just Britain, but Britain and any like-minded governments at that moment. And I think that's really, really concerning. I don't think that people should be scared to say what they want to say about the world politics or the world, wars and whatever issues happen to come to play, because they want to go on a holiday later in the year. And that's the kind of world that's being developed right now, that if you want, and I know a lot of my clients who want to go to America are extremely scared about saying certain perspectives. And that was during COVID, that was during Biden, and also now and for the future. They're afraid that if they say something now, the AI is going to record it and it's going to impact their ability to get a visa later.
Yeah, I think it's we've gone down that big black hole, and I don't like I can't see the bottom of it at the moment. United Kingdom rally, David Atherton, was it really?
It was indeed. I jotted a few mental notes in my head to adjectives to describe the event: joyous, happy, uplifting, multicultural. It was a fantastic day, and for me, a fantastic evening out. About 30 of us went down the pub afterwards and had a cracking night out down there as well. What Tommy Robinson has been able to do is he's moved the dial on the debate on immigration, and that's probably one of the main themes of the afternoon. How militant Islam is ruining Britain. What a threat it is to our national security, and what a threat it is to our culture. I'm not suggesting all Muslims, but I'm talking about a sizable minority who are openly hostile to Western liberal democracy and the Enlightenment. And I'm sorry, Tommy Robinson has been proved time and time again right. Whether it's grooming gangs, whether it's the terrorist threat of Islam, whether it's the takeover of prisoners by Muslim inmates, also that vape shops and barber shops that proliferate our high streets are actually centres of crime. So this is the thing that the government really resents him about. And if I can pick up on the banning of people coming in here, it just sums up the Stasi-like, the authoritarian, the fascist approach that Keir Starmer has adopted. And it is simply because the establishment, the blob, the swamp have lost the argument on immigration. I was just before I came on, I posted an ex-post about another 20 Pakistani Muslims who have been jailed for the rape of underage girls in this country. I've done some figures on it. 500,000 girls at least have been the victims of grooming gangs over a 30-year period. Tommy Robinson brings this into focus, and he gives an eloquent and articulate voice for the people that don't have a voice. And also, let me quickly say, a lot of the attendance at Tommy Robinson's rallies are badly affected. As was mentioned previously, if you put out a tweet for Tommy Robinson, I know people who have been fired working for the government for supporting Donald Trump, and if an employer or if you work in the public sector and you show your support for Tommy Robinson, you run a very high risk of being fired. It's absolutely appalling.
Can I ask you, Dave, because you're a journo and a very good investigative journalist, how does Tommy Robinson eat? Who pays he pays for his board and his food?
I sincerely don't know. I genuinely don't know. He's technically bankrupt. There was a case of the Syrian boy. A Syrian boy who accused of beating up girls and beating up other boys at school as well. And he was sued for libel and defamation, and he actually declared himself bankrupt. So I don't know who pays him. I certainly don't know whether it's Israel or whether, although at the last rally he did refer to a benefactor in America who gave him $100,000 towards the event. But no, I don't know. And does it really matter? The question is, if Israel, for example, is paying him, who cares? He's...
What an extraordinary thing to say, David. I mean, you just said you're quite happy because Robinson has led the British nationalist movement, if you like, down the blind alley of Zionism, which annoys an awful lot of people, really, because the two have got nothing to do with each other than a shared hatred of Muslims. I'm amazed you think it's perfectly okay.
Oh, okay, so hang on a second. So Palestine has the right to a homeland, but Israel hasn't, despite Judaism being the oldest Abrahamic religion dating back 3,500 years in the land of Canaan. If you want to play who was there first, it was the Jews.
I don't know. I don't want to play who was there first. I want to play international law, David. That's what I'd like to play. I mean, people ask, do you believe in the state of Israel? Well, first of all, tell me where its borders are, David. Could you draw them on a map for me, please? Because we can all see the endless expansionism into southern Lebanon, where, of course, the Israelis have been busy bulldozing churches, monasteries, schools, hospitals, and everything else.
And some have been some of the IDF soldiers have been jailed for that. I know of 3 that got 30 days in prison for
30 days in prison.
Desecrating a cross.
I mean, just this morning I've seen whole families in southern Lebanon being wiped out and murdered. I mean, the whole point about Robinson's march, or rather one of them, this so-called Christian Zionist element, there were large wooden crosses for people to pick up as if they were mimicking Christ's journey to Calvary, believe it or not, on Saturday. And yet, in Israel, you have a profoundly anti-Christian establishment, which has reduced the Christian population of Jerusalem from 20% at the time of the foundation of the State of Israel to less than 2% today. The Patriarch of Jerusalem, all the Christians in Israel are crying out for help and support, and completely bewildered at how people in Western Europe support the, well, in my book, satanic evil that we see perpetrated by the Zionist regime. So, this whole connection is not just spurious, it's deeply, deeply sinister, Mike.
Right. Well, hang on a second. Just one quick comeback on this one. There is an Arabic saying: "After Saturday comes Sunday." Once we've dealt with the Jews, we'll come after the Christians.
Well, I would say though at the moment the Christians are being, if you look what's happening in Jerusalem, it's not the Arabs that are going after the Christians. It's the Jewish people who in.
Well, okay, fine. Okay, but if you're not an honest answer, I'm not. I'm slightly aware of it, but I've never looked into it.
No, it's pretty serious.
I suggest you do, David. I suggest you do look into Zionist persecutions of Christians in Israel.
And I would take it up with the Israeli embassy in this country.
Sorry, what did you say about the Israeli embassy?
I would take the matter up. Should it be proven there
Please do.
No, but it has been. There is footage of a French nun. As one example, a French nun that was bulldozed by a Jewish chap, fairly beefy, knocked her over, but then went back and kicked her in the head. That's just one. And then the Christians there have said that they do need to leave because they are being attacked on a very regular basis, which is bordering on, well, it's hatred. I think Basil would agree on that part. So it is the Jewish, and this is just within Jerusalem, and it's not saying that all Jewish people are like that, and they are a far-right Jewish group. However, the number of attacks on Christians have been growing by the day, and that itself is a very serious issue. I was trying to ask Rada, what's your views on these visa bans? It all ties up with the rally. What's your views on these bans? It would have created a backlash, but does the British government care? Just as in Australia, do they care that there's a backlash? They seem to be hell bent on sanctioning or disrupting free speech and sanctioning those who support it.
I mean, this current government has turned quite a lot of people in Britain into martyrs, essentially, locking them up for social media posts and now banning anyone out certain ideologies support a certain political party. I think that the more they do that, the more people are going to naturally want to resist and protest that. And I think that the Unite the Kingdom rally is essentially just the front line of what so many people are feeling genuinely at home. Perhaps they didn't go to the rally, perhaps they don't want to vocalize their perspective, but I think we can see that attitude is shifting, and it's not just about letting Muslim immigrants into the country. It's about a changing country. And I think what we see from the Starmer government is this narrative that we should all be very happy with immigration. We should all be happy with multiculturalism. And they're relying on our history. They're relying on how we felt about immigration, how we felt about multiculturalism about 15 to 20 years ago. And it has changed substantially since then. And it's not just, it's not xenophobia, it's not racism, it's not just about Muslims who are being let into the country. It's about people from war zones. It's about, a deep cultural shift. It's about people seeing a change in government representation, a change in staff at hospitals and banks and facilities, and they're seeing that they're ultimately becoming a minority in their own country. And I think that's where the protest comes from. You see crime statistics being presented. I don't know whether you saw Piers Morgan trying to sort of manipulate the statistics by presenting them in a certain way. And I think that deceiving people into this this narrative that we're actually very happy about immigration and multiculturalism as it stands today is just lying to the population, deceiving them, and it's just the whole COVID all over again. So I think, banning people for coming into the country to share their perspective, threatening people like Elon Musk. We've got France saying we're going to arrest you, we're going to jail you over, whatever you say from America. I mean, this is very concerning, but I feel like it's a lot of noise being made by a dying party that has no values that British people overall support. So now it comes down to more, how are they strategically going to get what they want? Because they're coming up against a beast, essentially. And very much like we've seen in the United States, and I think we're a little bit further behind. But I think what we see is the strategy, the political strategy. And it's going to come down to someone who knows how to win elections. But I think also it's not just about elections, it's about us trying to get our democracy back. It's about us being tired of decisions being made, extreme decisions that affect not only now, but our future, our children's future, decisions being made without our consultation in any way whatsoever. It starts making ideas like Russell Brand has of more democracy, more interactivity, more, voting on small issues and more participation look like, something that people want, because I think they're just tired of such decisions being made without truly asking people how they feel. And you see Piers Morgan saying that, there haven't been any polls to suggest that British citizens don't want more immigration. Well, I think we can sort of judge for ourselves the overall climate in the UK, and see that there is an overwhelming number of people who don't want more immigration and who do want to address some of the issues, especially crime and safety, and our future to be addressed. So this is probably, I think, Keir Starmer's biggest mistake, is simply pretending that these issues don't exist, trying to crush us, trying to censor us, trying to ban us from participation.
Well, indeed, very briefly, I think we live in a post-democratic age, as far as I'm concerned. We are not a true democracy anymore.
And it does show you that the elite or the government has lost control when you start banning people who might say hurty things or who might write bad things. And one of those was from Rebel News, which is not my favourite organisation, but they have every right to say what they want to say. And Harvey Yemeni from Australia was going to go there. Now, I don't like Harvey much. He doesn't know me from a bar of soap, as they would say. But however, he is he has every right to report on that, providing he's not agitating, and he's fairly boisterous in people's faces. And he's a great supporter of Israel. And I found that surprising that they wouldn't allow him in, because he may be an agitator and create some sort of violence. Now, Harvey wouldn't do that, does just about everything else. So if you start banning journalists coming in because they might say hurty things about a particular government or issue, does that to you, David, show you that we have lost the plot, or the government's lost the plot?
Oh,
has lost control.
Well, it's lost control. It's certainly lost control of the hearts and minds of the British public at the moment. I think at the moment Labour in the polls are 16%, and Keir Starmer's approval rating is minus 47 points. So I know people in this country are I don't use the word hate, but Starmer is loathed in the extreme. He's viewed to be totally incompetent, a flip-flopper. I consider Keir Starmer to be a psychopath. I'm sorry, there's no other way to describe it. He has no empathy for anybody in this country, and it looks like his prime ministership is coming to an end. And when he was trying to save it with a speech, he just doubled down on his old, his background in human rights and liberalism, East Coast, West Coast liberalism, to attack the far right and anybody as a temerity to be against mass immigration. I look upon this country now as I don't even have any pride in my country anymore. I'm just so crestfallen the way that this country has become over the last year or so. It wasn't particularly great under the Conservatives either for 14 years, and the Conservative Party's only finally woken up, and I also would doubt whether it's sincere as well. Unfortunately, the Conservative Party in this country is dominated by liberals, and the only real centre-right parties in this country are Reform, Advance, and Restore. And and at the moment, Reform look like they're going to be. They could even have a working majority, and if there is, I should be. I'll be running around the streets. Maybe excuse me, maybe in a state of undress in celebration, but perish the thought. That was the thing I liked about the Tommy Robinson rally, because you actually came away feeling optimistic. That I was not a lone traveller in the world, and there's millions of people in this country who share my views.
Basil, I have and we talked about it last time, and I'm not going back on this by any stretch. It's very hard, isn't it, Basil, to work out who's the good guys and who's the bad guys, especially the higher they go up the ladder. Now, if we have the bad guys and the good guys all on the same page, and they want to, and if you look at 2030, and I haven't taken much notice of it, but they are all in a hurry to achieve something. If you want to weaken the opposition, if you want to create some dissent and get what you want, you create chaos. If you look at the chaos, you've got Donald Trump, we're going to bomb you, we're not going to bomb you. We've wiped out every ship there is. Oops, there's some more there. It creates chaos. If you look what's happening with, say, the rally in the UK, it created chaos. There was a chaotic end of it, because we're talking about things now that we're not all that sure about. If you look at immigration, it's chaos. If you look at the war in Ukraine, it's chaos. Look at what's happening in the EU, it's all chaos. Do you think, this is just a thought, do you think that perhaps the reality of what we're seeing is not all that real at all? It's smoke and mirrors, an apparition. It's a bit like the Mad Hatter's Tea Party in many ways. Do you think that they are trying to create chaos and dissent? So the old divide. We will divide if we conquer. If we divide the people, and they're dividing everybody. But they're on different issues. So at the end of the day, you have one person who may agree with that, disagree with that, and if they're all on that same in the same barrel doing the same thing, you have chaos, and that's what they want, in my opinion. They want chaos because they can achieve many, many things if we're not unified. So back to Tommy Robinson, do you think he was part of chaos? If you look at Israel, they create chaos. Look what's happening in Lebanon. Look what's happening in other parts of the Middle East. Chaos. What's the end result? And if you're looking at, say, 2030 as a point to move towards, are they all in the same part of the plane moving up towards a pointy end for that grand finale, which has had all the acts beforehand, started with a C, ends with an S, chaos? Is that how you see it, or is it a little more deeper than that?
Well, it's a lot to unpick there, Mike. I think a lot of people feel that over the last 5 or 10 years, the world has become a more chaotic place. We've seen a lot of the norms, protocols and understandings that have been in place since the end of the Second World War gradually ripped up one by one. Well, we've got an American president who seems more interested in his own self-glorification, is sort of engaged in an extended narcissistic looting of his own treasury at the moment. I mean, it's absolutely bizarre what's going on over there. David quite rightly pointed out how unpopular Keir Starmer is. Well, the same thing applies to Donald Trump, elected not to start any more wars. And not only has he started one in Iran, he's now threatening to invade Cuba and Bolivia as well, believe it or not. And I don't think they're empty threats either. So the first thing we want to do if we want to avoid chaos is return to peace. And then perhaps after peace, we can have some justice. But ordinary people the world over don't want chaos, far from it. Is it being introduced in order to destabilize populations? Well, very possibly. Going back to David's point, I agree with him. We've got a tremendous democratic deficit in this country. The present government was elected by about 1 in 7 adults. It got little more than a third of the vote when half the people voted 2 years ago. So that already puts them down at 1 in 6. And then when you factor in a lot of people are not even on the electoral register, less than 1 in 6 people voted for a government which we're now stuck with for another 3 years. And when we do get another plebiscite, it's on the wholly imperfect, anachronistic first past the post system, which means you can get a quarter of the votes and only a tiny handful of seats. But that there's a tipping point up around the 30% mark where you can suddenly form a majority in the House of Commons, whereupon you've got carte blanche to do what you like, whether it's irrevocably changing the demographic makeup of Britain via immigration, or for that matter, destroying the fabric of our countryside, as this government planned to do, by building hundreds of thousands of shoddily built residences over the green fields of southern England, creating new towns and completely changing the relationship between our rural and built environments, quite apart from the prancing around on the international stage that the likes of David Lammy and Yvette Cooper get to do with, as I say, as far as I'm concerned, no mandate whatsoever. So we don't want chaos. A lot of people rely on structure and integrity and things like the National Health Service. We don't want these things disintegrating, but we do want to see people's voices being heard more regularly and more systematically than they are at the moment.
So, Basil, is this then with chaos? Because I firmly believe this is the case. With chaos, is it intentional, or is it just the way the greedy ones, the elite, those that, we look at the Elon Musk and those that want to control the universe. We've got the Donald Trumps who wants to control the galaxy. We have government that can't control the backyard, but they would like to. They put in all these sorts of restrictions, and then they relax other areas of so-called democracy or communities. Is it all? The end result, though, is still going to be the same. What do you think the end result will be? Do you think either one, it creates an opportunity for those wanting to create more chaos and implant themselves upon the world, or is it one that will create turmoil that will end up having no sort of calmness or interaction with our fellow human beings? It'll be all out of control and we're all running around like mad people, a bit like Clockwork Orange, but enhanced.
Well, there's an old Masonic saying, ordo ad chaos, which means order out of chaos. And I think the oligarchy, for want of a better expression, certainly do like to create chaos from time to time in order to then reorder society according to their own design, which inevitably means more authoritarianism and surveillance. The restrictions on travel that were imposed, not just on some people going to the Unite the Kingdom event, but also the Nakba commemoration, I abhor that kind of thing on both sides. You either believe in freedom of speech and freedom of travel, or you don't. Likewise, if somebody then on these shores commits an offence such as conspiracy to organise a riot, conspiracy to murder, or any of the other things we've long since had on the statute book, which you could claim limit free speech, then fair enough, because there are limits to freedom of speech. We don't shout fire in a crowded theatre, for example, and you would expect there to be some consequences if you did. But no, we've had all sorts of events in this century, unfortunately, all of which result in reductions in civil liberties, which is what makes me extremely suspicious about terrorist activity and things like that, because the outcome is always the same. Yes, you create chaos in the short term, but then when order is restored, it is with less liberty. And I personally don't want to see that. I'm in favour of maximum liberty for all of us at all times, to say what we like, think what we like, and do what we like. And we have enjoyed tremendous liberty over the last 50 or 100 years, increasingly so. It's the Enlightenment, but the travel now is in the opposite direction.
The abuse of the terrorism act in this country, I think, is appalling. It's just to be, where you are obliged to answer questions, and often the scenarios when people have been arrested, it's nothing to do with terrorism. It's just trumped up to make you hand over your number of your phone and your PC, and be made to answer questions. You've lost your right to silence.
Rather, the manipulation of humankind from various governments, and I believe it's I think there's an end. The working towards an end, towards the pointy end of the plane, and I don't know what it will be. I have a feeling that it's going to be there, because you look at COVID. COVID was an exercise, and they learnt where they went wrong. They worked out where they went wrong. Next time they're going to make sure they don't go wrong. And if you look at the increasing barrage of viruses that are attacking us, from Ebola to other, that ship that was off the US that had what was it called, that rare virus. All these things are there, and they always mention there are no vaccines for it. But alas, they might have one hidden away. Oh, guess what? Warp Speed Mark II, and we've got another vaccine. So you look at the manipulation of humanity by, whether it's government, whether it's by big tech, big pharma, whatever. And there is a manipulation there, and I think they are creating such a whirlpool of chaos or understanding of what's happening. I think it's falling right into their lap. Do you think, though, that people are now understanding this, but do you think also it's adding the fuel to the fire? The communications that we have that we never had before. We know exactly what happens anywhere in the world at that particular time. Do you think that is part of the play here? Do you think that our information is there for us to assimilate and try and make sense of? Having said that, though, the manipulation of that information, that misinformation, is also then comes into view. Where do you think we're at with this? Do you think it is the communication? Do you think it's the misinformation, the information operation that we have from the elite, the big pharma, big tech, governments, the oligarchs, those sort of people? Or do you think it's just day-to-day life, and that we're just more aware of it?
Yes, I think that we are certainly more aware of it, and that things happen faster now. I think the speed has increased. So that's certainly going to have a play. There's so much going on that we can barely keep up. And we have countries who are enemies, whose role it is to sow chaos. We have corporations and, as you say, oligarchs, elites, who want to profit from this chaos. chaos is profit, and that's why I believe we will always have chaos. I think it's not just human nature, but we're talking about financial, economic incentive. We have lobbyists heavily invested in creating and sowing this chaos. It helps them with elections. It helps them get government grants and budgets and projects signed off by other corporations. So, I mean, there's always going to be that financial incentive. We always have enemy states incentivized to create that chaos as well. And now we have, of course, media houses have always profited and benefited from people being very active and afraid. I think that's one of the biggest issues, is people always needing to be afraid, because fear is profitable. Fear means we're going to go out and buy the newspaper in days gone by. But now it means we're going to be glued to our machines. We're going to be looking at what's happening on social media. We're going to be engaging with articles. All of that is profit and surveillance, in fact. So there's always going to be that chaos coming. I think we also have, this concern that Israel might be investing in Tommy Robinson or here or there. And certainly that is an issue. But we also have China investing deeply into our country, into our politics, into our media. We have now the UAE, Qatar, Saudi investing deeply into Western lobbyist firms, into media, into education. We have universities funded by Qatar. And there's very little concern for that, and almost nothing much that can be done at this stage to stop it. Politicians need money. Groups and organisations and charity need money. They're getting it from countries. Is it any better to get it from the UAE or Qatar than from Israel? It just happens to be who is demonised by the media or the narrative, the politicians at the time. And both sides are just fighting it out. All sides, in fact, are fighting it out. They're fighting it out for profit, for gain. And that's never going to stop, as far as I'm concerned. We might have a moment of peace, but it's not going to last long. We might have COVID, then we're going to have Ukraine, then we're going to have Iran. There's always going to be something. And I think that people need to understand that, and perhaps not be so reactive to those kinds of issues that are clearly being brought by those vested interests. And rather than just reacting in that moment and being distracted, I think we need to look at what's creating it and get to the source. For example, with COVID, get to the source, get to Wuhan lab, get to Fauci. What's happened there? We're not seeing anyone being held to account. We're not seeing corporations being held to account, in fact. So I think people need to group together and really focus on that, rather than what's happening and how to survive the next apocalypse.
Well, I think the apocalypse is here now. That's me being awfully cheerful and pessimistic about the future, not. David, I just want to mention that government used to be responsible for avoiding chaos. Now they create chaos, and that's from foreign governments wishing to create chaos and to get that sympathy vote, perhaps. The chaos you mentioned, and the reason why I mentioned before, Tommy Robinson, who pays for his board and lodgings, his food, and you said, I don't know, but he is a bankrupt. Pretty impressive for someone who has no money to organise this 432 million vote rally they had the other day and on the weekend. No money. He organised it all. He has no money coming in, yet he lives quite comfortably, does a fair bit of travelling, and et cetera, good on him. The thing I put to you is, and I've said government used to be responsible for avoiding chaos, now they create chaos. I would probably dare say that this rally, if you look at Tommy Robinson and his background, there's an excellent chance that this rally was organised in joint partnership with probably with Netanyahu's mob. And you look at also because he received a donation, as you mentioned, of 100,000 from a anonymous person in the US. Perhaps that was CIA.
The guy was named. He's an American guy.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying that these are some of the things that have been thrown out there at the moment.
Yeah.
He works for Israel and the CIA. For someone with no money he's done a pretty bloody good job setting up this and organising this rally with 432 trillion people. Surely though, if I go back to what I said before, government used to be responsible for avoiding chaos. Now they promote it, and the intrusions across borders are quite common. If you look at what the UK has done, look at what countries in the EU have done, and look at what the US has done. Can you make my fears less worrying for me?
Well, the phrase of the military-industrial complex actually goes back to the 1950s and Eisenhower. So it's been, what, 70 years that the concept has been around, and certainly at the moment it's being used to the nth degree. Certainly in the Ukraine-Russian war. I think less so in Iran, for simple reason. It seems every time the West gets involved in the Middle East, it ends up being a little bit of a, excuse my French, shit show. Iraq, for example, Afghanistan, absolutely dreadful. But the stakes that we're playing for in the Iran war are extremely high. If the IRGC regime can be neutralised, or there is in fact regime change, it might herald 30 years of peace. By the way, Rana mentioned Qatar and UAE. First of all, the UAE is the only largely Muslim state that where there is actually a synagogue, and Qatar are the people who are financed.
Apart from Iran, of course, apart from the long-established Jewish community in Iran and the synagogue in Tehran,
most of them have left.
Yeah, most of them left because they were bombed by Mossad, who wanted to get them to emigrate to Israel.
Well, no, hang on a second. After 1948, there were millions of Jews that were expelled from the Middle East, and the only place they could go to was Israel. So
yeah, a lot of them they weren't expelled. A lot of them left because they came under violent attack from Zionist agitators who wanted them to move to Israel. They'd lived there perfectly peacefully.
Yeah, but the vast majority went of their own free will.
No, you can't say that. You don't know that. You've just made that up.
No. I actually have an Arab Jewish friend who said that they had their property taken off, and this is what is now what was then Aden, and it's now Yemen. They had their property taken off of them, and stripped of all their possessions, and they were forcibly deported to Israel. So I'm sorry, and
that may have happened in Aden. I don't know that case, but in Iran and Iraq, as I said, in Iran there's still a large Jewish community. The synagogue there was bombed by Israel only a few weeks ago, David.
I should investigate that. I did read that, and I know much of what goes on in the Middle East. The thing I wanted to talk about was also mentioned Qatar as well. That is the country that has financed the IRGC, has financed Hezbollah, has financed Hamas, and I really do pray that Donald Trump sorts out the Ayatollahs, and to herald in the peace, because if Saudi Arabia signs the Abraham Accords, we're home and dry. Most other
we're not, because you've still got the the former IDF soldier turned Jewish anti-Zionist activist Haim Brashith called the militarized vampire of Israel. That's the one that starts all the wars, David.
Well, I probably understand Israel better than most people, and believe you me, 99% of them just want to live in peace and get on with their lives.
No, they don't. The vast majority of them want to exterminate all the Palestinians. They're very open about their genocidal intent in Israel these days.
No. That will never happen in practice. I don't believe. I really genuinely don't believe that they want them glassed over and rid of. I just don't buy that.
Look, leave me your contact details. I'll get them off Jenny, and I can send you some links.
Jenny, you're welcome to pass on my WhatsApp number.
I just want to ask you, Basil. Let's talk about the celebrity game show host in waiting, Nigel Farage, because that he is. I mean, in my opinion, I haven't wavered from that for the last 18 months, and I won't. Let's talk about his 5 million quid donation from the crypto king living in Thailand. Basil, do you have any information on that? I think it was, and then he had a donation from another billionaire. Tell us about this, because we talk about Starmer being on the nose and who might replace him also being on the nose. But if we have a change of government reform, they would seem to be on the nose too.
Yeah, I mean, Farage does seem to be getting into hot water over how he paid for this £1.4 million house. And he claimed he paid for it out of his fee from appearing on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. But now it turns out that wasn't the case. And he's been in receipt of what are clearly political donations, which he hasn't declared in the right way. So I don't know whether this is going to sink him permanently. I don't think it'll make much difference with his supporters, who probably couldn't care less where he gets his money from. But in terms of wider public opinion, or possibly a sustained campaign by the media to bring him down, it could be very damaging. I'm afraid to say that, as in the United States, British prime ministers, like American presidents, are selected rather than elected. And I think Farage may have the seal of approval from the UK National Security State to become the next prime minister, in which case this scandal won't be allowed to affect his long-term chances. But I'm guessing as to that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that perhaps Nigel's in a spot of bother, and I think he will be. And everyone assumes that Nigel will be the next Conservative, in inverted commas, Prime Minister, but I don't know. There's still 3 years to go. If you look at the leaders of the free world, and look at Donald Trump, he's just initiated some lovely little tax concessions for himself that you can't investigate me ever, which is not a bad little one to have. Then you have the Nigel Farage, inverted commas, indiscretions. Then you have the Keir Starmer indiscretions, and you have all sorts of things. It would seem that those in power, and if you look at the Middle East, the same thing would apply to them, the same in power. There's no scrutiny, no declaration of honesty, and there's no accountability. So if there's none of those, no scrutiny and no accountability in particular, it doesn't augur well for the future, does it?
It's interesting, but I mean, the way I see it is that if we scrutinise these people for donations received, there is always a loophole. And I see the same thing in Australia, that's limited the amount of donation you can take from any particular individual or group to 4,000. And of course, all of the lobbyists crop up and say, well, just pay the lobbying firm and they'll do whatever job is required to get the next person elected. There's always workarounds. And I think probably people, the public, aren't too focused on that unless it's a donation from someone sinister or a very, like a Chinese spy, for example, or a Russian this, or, unless it's going to be from an organization or group that has a very concerning agenda. I don't think the general population is too concerned about this. Of course, I mean, look at America. That's just, a whole new story, isn't it? With, insider trading and everything, which is obviously very concerning. Decisions are being made, obviously, with, profit and incentive in mind. But even if they don't take the money now, there is always other incentives. For example, Tony Blair. Do you think that he was incentivized somehow for his post-political career to make certain decisions while he had power and while he was in office? Of course. And I think that's always going to be the issue, whether money is taken right now or the promise of money later.
Yeah, I agree, David. I don't know which. I suppose they're all putrid anyway, whether it's US, UK, Australian politics. Look at the EU. If you want to see the Mad Hatter's Tea Party and Clockwork Orange combined, There you are. It doesn't, but it doesn't augur well for the future, does it, David? I mean, we have the ones that we look up to, or some used to look up to, the leaders of our country. For example, Donald Trump, in our case, Anthony Albanese, you got Keir Starmer, and all those others in waiting, preaching that we need to be better people. We need to, do the right thing, and yet they're not. You look at Donald Trump, President Peace of the universe, and he's talking about going after Bolivia and Cuba. One, that would seem to be like a bully, but secondly, he has no right. But look at international law, which Basil brought up. They don't give it. They don't care at all about the ramifications, because they are untouchable. Whether you're Netanyahu, whether you're Starmer, and you look at what's happening at the moment, that's all been hush hush. And I won't go into that at the moment. Then you have Donald Trump. You have in Australia Anthony Albanese. You look at the increase in bank balance on Ursula von der Leyen. The whole lot. They are unaccountable. So if our beacon of honesty and truth and hope for the future is as corrupt as get out of here, what hope is there for us?
Well, I suppose it depends on the individual that's involved here at the moment. But at least with the internet these days, we have more transparency. And if I just
do we have that transparency? I mean, it has been manipulated most likely to suit an agenda. So the transparency on the internet is highly flawed, but the transparency isn't from these people who are in charge.
In what way is it flawed?
Well, I mean, if you look, okay, I'll just use one as an example. Climate change. There's one. The world's going to boil, freeze, all that sort of stuff.
But the point is, where I read the counter arguments on climate change is on the internet.
But government isn't changing. But that was just an example.
Yeah.
But go back to the leaders of our countries, who are supposed to be the beacon of hope, who are supposed to be leading, because they're honest, they're great leaders, they're going to lead our country to betterment, all that sort of shit.
Well,
they're not. They are just, so if they are putrid, and they are, then what hope do we have? Because if we can't look up to the people that we voted for or got into power, to run our lives, to run our country for betterment, what hope do we have?
Are you advocating for anarcho-capitalism? Or at least the most extreme form of classical liberalism you can come up with? I suppose politicians, since the birth of man, have always been corrupt. And yes, these people should be brought to account for what they've done.
But they're not, are they?
Well, they're not. But at least we know about it now to a lesser or greater extent. Before that, we were reliant upon the BBC and the mainstream media and the newspapers for our news. It's one of those things we have to put up with, in the sense that what other way can we do it in the meantime? With Nigel Farage, I'll just say one thing in his defence, that what's his name, Starmer downgraded his security, and he has to pay for much of it himself. He has to pay for much of it himself, and it can't be cheap. Even, let's say it's £1,000 a day for a couple of bodyguards and a decent armoured car. That's £365,000 a year. He has to come out of his own pocket. So to have some sympathy for him. And also, when it comes to the crypto guy, he was one of the few mainstream politicians who was prepared to go to a crypto conference in New York and advance the cause for crypto. So it's not unreasonable to think that somebody might thank him in some ways.
5 million. I wish they thanked me that way.
Well, Basil, you might have worked out I'm fiercely pro-Israel, and I can say to you in all sincerity, I've never received a penny from the Israeli government or any sponsor or any Israeli citizen or any Jew. I do it because I believe in it. A week before my 12th birthday, which was 1972, I rushed downstairs to watch the Olympics on the TV, and instead of David Coleman, commentating on the athletics, David Coleman was commentating on a terrorist act. When the 11 Israeli athletes and coaches were butchered at the Munich Olympics. So ever since then, I've been pro-Israel. I do it out of conviction, not because I don't like Muslims.
Again, there you are. There's part of the problem, and I mean, I often would refer to this as a cult. You drink the Kool-Aid, no matter what they do, and and by the way, we have a lot of Jewish friends. My wife works in the fashion industry, so a lot of Jewish friends there too. And I know, as Basil has said, they are absolutely disgusted with what's happening. But it would mean, though, that the people that have your attitude are very ignorant to what is really happening. And again, that's part of the problem, isn't it? It's the chaos that's created by various governments to distract and to disturb and create disharmony and so forth. That's they're winning that battle there with chaos.
Sure.
As for Tommy Robinson, and we go back to Tommy, if he was being paid by Israel, what you have basically is that Israel organised this bloody rally in the first place. They're the ones that financed it and backed it and made it happen. For what end?
Well, they worked out a few months ago, or even longer, the Israelis, that they were on a losing wicket trying to make Israel look good while it committed atrocity after atrocity and slaughtered women and children by the thousand and mutilated thousands more in Gaza. So instead, they decided that what we'll do is get everybody to hate Muslims with this very simple equation. Most Palestinians are Muslims. The people that you dislike in your Western countries are Muslims. They're our enemy, therefore they're your enemy. Very simple stuff, even a Neanderthal could understand. But what people forget is that a lot of the recent Muslim immigration into Western Europe, particularly from Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan, is the result of wars caused by, started by, engendered by Israel. Now, some people say that this is actually deliberate, that amongst Israel's agendas is the weakening of Western Europe, indeed of Christendom, with mass Islamic immigration, that is actually a subtext to the stated aims of Zionism, the destruction of Christendom, because these wars are all completely unnecessary. People talk about Israel being in a tough neighborhood. It wasn't until the Zionists arrived. Jews had lived in peace with their Muslim and Christian brothers in that part of the world, in Palestine, for centuries before the Zionists arrived, with their agenda of Jewish supremacy and ultra-violence for anybody that got in their way.
Well, I've got to disagree with that. It was all peace and harmony, since the birth of Muhammad in the Middle East. Completely wrong. There were massacres on either side. They were fighting each other.
It was an awful lot better than after the arrival of the Zionists.
Well, no, it was for the simple reason is the Palestinians, murderous group.
Palestinians welcomed Jewish refugees into their homes, only, as is the case with the Hadid family, to find that the Zionists had changed the locks after they'd welcomed them into their homes. Read a copy of Ilan Pappé, in the late 1940s. Read a copy of Ilan Pappé's The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine.
The Grand Mufti met Adolf Hitler in November 1941. And he did not want.
And Hitler also did deals with. You've heard of the Haber Agreement, haven't you? Hitler also met with Zionists. Hitler was a Zionist. He wanted the Jews out of Germany, and he was
but he didn't let them leave. He didn't let them leave.
So what we have is again this interaction between Basil and Dave. You're talking about absolute chaos, whether it's within a community or a country or internationally. I have to ask you this
Sorry,
final
just to
question.
finish up, I mean, David, at least you might have heard of the bombing of the King David Hotel by Zionist
Yes,
terrorists.
17 Jews died by Menachem Begin. Yes, I know of it.
Yeah, so,
17 Jews died.
and one of the perpetrators of that, Begin, proudly announced later, "We are the fathers of terrorism in the whole world."
And he went on to be a democratically elected prime minister. No,
What
Nelson.
does that tell you?
No,
What does that tell you?
Nelson Mandela is rightly thought to be a great man, but he was in jail for 27 years for opposing apartheid. He was jailed for planning the planting of terrorist bombs in department stores in South Africa.
So, as we are running out of time, and I don't want to just collapse on this body, I'm trying to keep alive, as you can hear with the voice, but because again, it is chaos. I mean, and I think it's intentional. I think it's intentional chaos. I think the rally on the weekend, I think that was intentional. I think it was chaotic. It created all sorts of mind games with many people around the world, and that creates the chaos. And I think it was organised by as Tommy Robinson takes credit for being the organiser. However, Tommy Robinson has to receive his money from somewhere, and I believe that was either from the Central Intelligence Agency in the US, along with Israel, or just Israel. And if that was the case, then you have a massive protesting immigration malfeasance, you might say, or illegal immigrants organised by another country. That itself has to be questioned. But again, it's all chaos, and rather to wind this up, the question is government doing more dividing and conquering, and are there more opportunities for creating chaos? And if they are, what's the end game?
I mean, if you just look at Keir Starmer's comments about the Tommy event, I mean, immediately he was divisive. Immediately he said that basically people who turned up or were in support of the cause were racist, xenophobic. What else did he say, David? I think there was a whole list, but it was extremely divisive. And I thought fascist, basically calling it thugs as well, that they're thugs, that they're fascists, that they're racist. And I think it's unbelievable that the Prime Minister, given the criticism he's already received about his divisive speak, and given the narrative that he tries to push forward, which is that we should be more inclusive and more supportive of other people and more tolerant towards religions and races, I think that it's unbelievable that he came and pointed out that the people who not only turned up to that rally, but who share similar views or who supported it or support some of it, maybe not all of it, but support, a large portion of the principles put forward by Tommy, that they're thugs, racist thugs. So I think absolutely it's divisive. He clearly got advice to say that because it would activate support from his particular constituency, which he's looking to gain support from. That's all it is, a political move. So definitely, of course, they love that chaos. They love stepping in when Starmer loved it when he could turn around and say, actually, Donald Trump, I'm not going to support the war in Iran. Chaos. And he was out there every day making speeches. So, of course, they love it. Of course, they prey on it. They create it. They controversialize normal citizens or, members of journalists, reporters, investigators, people like Tommy. If he was funded by Israel or America or, whatever, what we do know is that there was a time that Tommy was saying exactly the same things that he's saying today, and that he genuinely believed that from the bottom of his heart, and that, it's up to us to look at the narrative and look at the evidence and make our own decisions about that, regardless of that sort of interference. And I think we have the data and statistics and intelligence now and the access to alternative media to be able to deliberate that ourselves. So I'm not as concerned about that as I used to be with, external funding, because we have that sort of access, because, as you say, we're not just dependent on the BBC. And I think what we'll see is governments absolutely doing what they always do, politicians doing what they do, maximising problems, maximising drama, exaggerating issues like they did with COVID, like they did with, everything under the sun. Anything to get through new policy, anything to get through more taxes. We're going to see that. We're going to have to fight for it on a case-by-case basis for the rest of our natural lives.
David, and I did mention Tommy Robinson, I think, and by the way, anybody who went to that rally had every right to do so. They have a right to have a voice, and that's what government seems to not want by banning those speakers and journalists from coming into the UK to report or to be part of a particular rally. Smacks of censorship beyond all belief. But government does like chaos, doesn't it? Because it creates the divide between one person and the next person.
Divide and rule, basically. Divide and rule kind of.
What's the end game though? What would because if you look at the UK and the US and all, it's all coming together now. Censorship, control of the internet, yada yada yada, all happening in one go. You have international law just brown-eyed at. If you don't know what that means, look up and go to Wikipedia. It's not a very nice look, but they do those things. They are snubbing international law. Look at the killings, the mass killings in the Middle East. No one is really concerned anymore. Look at the Middle East, the Iran stoush. It makes news, but people are more concerned with something else. So it sort of goes off the radar. This is all part of, I think, what government is trying to do. The internet itself is being controlled in many ways, and what I'm saying now will probably disappear. We've seen our own numbers. We have no idea how many watch us or listen to us. Our numbers get wiped off in front of us. So all this sort of stuff, it feeds into the chaos because you're worried about that, you're worried about that. Is this the end? So governments do that very well. So what is the end game of governments creating the dissension, the divide with their own citizens?
I was just thinking it through as you were talking to me. Is the government using George Orwell's 1984 as a blueprint? Is that where they want us to end up with? No free speech. Starmer's talking about digital ID, which has been compared to the social credit system in China. Is it that they are trying their very best to regain the initiative from the citizens who can now freely communicate with each other, and create a society, as I say, that's post-democratic, and where we will become vassals and serfs of the state. Is this communism and Nazism on steroids?
But why does the government have to retain the initiative with their own citizens?
Oh, for the simple reason is the political class are different to us. They love big budgets. They like the power. And most importantly, they love being in control of situations, and more importantly, us. And that is their aim. And they've lost the initiative, in my opinion, with the internet and social media.
Well, a information operation is always used by a particular side to convince their own citizens that what they're doing is right. If you look at Bell Pottinger, that fell apart dramatically about 20 years ago. Basil, if they use if they're using an information operation, but the enemy are their own citizens, which it would seem to be, and that we have an intrusion from other governments controlling, for example, if you believe that Tommy Robinson worked for Israel, then Israel, they were the financier and part organizer of the rally that was protesting against Muslim immigrants. And you have them then becoming part of a country's direction and doing that quite underhandedly. So what's the end result with this chaos that governments are creating at the moment? Because they don't need to retake the initiative with their own citizens. They need to be working for their citizens. But if they're creating all this chaos with hatred and free speech, decimation of free speech and so forth, I don't understand what the end game is unless they want perpetual chaos to have the upper hand.
Well, the end game is control, really, more than anything else. I mean, you mentioned the Israel lobby. I mean, they finance politicians all over the world of every hue. Labour Friends of Israel, Conservative Friends of Israel, Liberal Democrat Friends of Israel, all very well-funded lobby groups because they like to always be on the winning side and to, crush or marginalise any dissent. But the end game, Mike, is control. That's whether it's the Israelis, who are one phalanx of the oligarchy, or other groups that want to dominate and control people's lives. And it's as simple as that, really. And that's what we've seen over the last 30 or 40 years, is this creeping authoritarianism. I mean, I'm sure one thing that David and I could agree on is that that's what governments, both Conservative and Labour, have done to Britain over the last 30 years and continue to do, using various excuses, whether it's they don't like some of the people that were due to turn up at the Tommy Robinson event, or they don't like some of the people that were due to turn up at the Nakba commemoration event, or whether it's tracking us via our phones, digital ID. All these things create, well, what the Home Secretary called a panopticon of control and surveillance. And one of the things we've got to fight against in the coming years is precisely that. We need to get this dreadful Palantir company out of the NHS and out of all government contracts. And in general, we've got to resist digital ID. Of course, they say it's going to be voluntary to start with, but that's usually the thin end of the wedge. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you. So we've got to be on our guard. But I don't fear this sort of general anarchy, Mike, that you seem to.
I don't know. Actually, I do know. I believe, Havor and Morich and I, when we were at TNT together, we had a similar look. It's a big train coming towards us. It's not the light at the end of the tunnel. But again, who knows? I mean, the smoke and mirrors and the distortion of reality is right there in front of us. But what's real and what's not. I have to thank you all for being part of the Protagonists today. Basil Valentine, journalist, broadcaster, and the best-looking journo UK column. I can almost say that without laughing. See, there you are, misinformation all over again. Basil, if they want to find out more about you, how do they do that?
I'm on UK column again on Friday at 1 p.m. and also on the Sunday Wire with Patrick Henningsen.
Well, there's two very good-looking men. I can't include Hesher in that one. Ryan McLean, I can't, because he's not as good-looking as you and Patrick. Rada Sterling, human rights lawyer. If somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
They can just go to my website, radasterling.com, or find me on social media, same name.
And David Atherton, journo, and great bloke. How do they find out about you?
I never knew today was going to be so spicy. Well, actually, no, Jennifer did warn me, actually. But on X, I'm at Dave Atherton. Simple as that.
You know what, man? Here's the thing. It's if you have an opinion, you should be able to say it.
Yeah.
If it's as simple as that. If you don't want to hear it, walk away.
Well, if someone like Basil says something about the way Christians are being treated in Israel, I would take it seriously, and I'll get my number off Jennifer, and we'll have a chat about this maybe this afternoon. I don't want to big myself up here, but I do know quite a few Israelis, should we say?
No, it was actually on even I think 60 Minutes covered it from the US. No, the ABC, one of their weekend shows, they actually covered it.
Yeah, not like trust liberal outlets like that to a greater extent, but I'm sure there's a German. I did read very vaguely something on X about something going on about Christians in Israel.
Well, there's criticism of every country when you think about it. I mean, look at America, look at Britain, all over the Middle East. I'd expect terrible things to happen in all countries, frankly, but it's good to know about them.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Yeah, I think it is too. Thank you so much for being part of the gig today. This has been the Protagonists on The World Today. We'll catch you again tomorrow. providing I'm still alive. Good whiskey will fix it up. I've had one in my case, but I'm going to have one. Can't wait in about 15 minutes' time. Take care, be kind to your neighbours, be kind to yourself, and this has been The Protagonist.